You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Thank you for listening to Historical Blindness, the Odd Past podcast. I'm Nathaniel Lloyd, your host. You've found the debut of a new interstitial series, Blind Spots. The principal installments of the Historical Blindness podcast require quite a bit of work on my part, including research, composition, formatting each blog post, and recording, editing, and mixing the audio episodes, all of which I have to find time to do myself. As such, the podcast has settled into an already somewhat hectic monthly release schedule. I understand, however, as a podcast aficionado myself, that listeners like to find new episodes of their favorite podcasts show up in their feeds far more frequently than this. Therefore, in an effort to please existing fans and perhaps find a wider audience, I am now endeavoring to fill the barren time span between the primary episodes of the show with these shorter blind spots, in which I intend to further explore the most recent story I covered or briefly relate a somewhat peripheral story. With this purpose in mind, recall our last episode, which opened the mysterious Voynich Manuscript for your perusal. Wilfrid Voynich's manuscript is not, however, alone in its inscrutability and mystique. Consider another mysterious antiquarian manuscript, unreadable and resistant to all attempts at translation or decipherment since it turned up nearly 200 years ago. This mysterious tome, the Codex of Rohonc. All his life, Gustav Battiani had lived in England as a count, breeding racehorses and enjoying a life of wealth and leisure. Nevertheless, his heritage as a Hungarian nobleman was an important part of his identity. And when his homeland erupted in revolution, one of many across Europe during the tumultuous year of 1848, sometimes called the Spring of Nations or the Springtime of the Peoples, Battiani proved his devotion to Hungary more than mere lip service, acting on behalf of Magyar nationalists in a constitutional ministry during a time when his family member, Lajos Battiani, became the first Hungarian prime minister. While Lajos was executed by firing squad a year later, Gustav survived his involvement in the political upheaval and lived out his years in comfort in his English home, enjoying fine food, drink, and horse races until the day his heart gave out in 1883. Today, what Battiani is more often remembered for is his part in bringing the so-called Rohonc Codex to light. In 1838, he donated an extensive library from Rohonc, a village in Burgenland, where his family owned much land, to the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. Some records seem to indicate that the Codex of Rohonc was at the library as far back as 1743, when it was identified in catalogs as a prayer book, despite the fact that it couldn't have been read to determine such a thing. Agents of the Academy very quickly observed that the book was an item of interest. Leather-bound and 448 pages, the manuscript contained a variety of antiquarian-seeming religious illustrations and much writing of an unrecognizable character. Moreover, there appeared to be a watermark of an anchor with a star that led one scholar to eventually conclude the paper originated from 16th century Italy. One of the agents of the Academy of Sciences believed, upon first laying eyes on it, that the script resembled runic Hungarian, and thus correlated well with another recent find, the Wooden Book of Turok, which was making news in that it seemed to hint at a grander Hungarian history than was contemporaneously known. If the Rohonc Codex also proved to be an important relic of Hungary's past, it would be a major find. Thus, the earnest study of the Rohonc Codex began. The book was found to contain much Christian iconography, But additionally, some illustrations depicting astronomical symbols, such as stars, suns, and crescent moons, have hinted at pagan or even Islamic iconography, which some have theorized indicates the book comes from an unusually cosmopolitan society, or originates from a syncretistic religious tradition. And the system of writing turned out to be no less mystifying than the illustrations. While some characters appear rune-like, as first surmised, others seem rounded and not runic at all. Various linguists have thought the script to be Greek, Cyrillic, or even an alphabet originating from an obscure ancient region of the Roman era called Dacia. One subsequently criticized theorist claimed to recognize the writing as Indian Brahmic and hazarded a subsequently discredited translation. Moreover, the number of distinct characters alone made translation impossible, as there appear to be at least 200 graphemes, suggesting that rather than a code or language, it may be written using a syllabary, which provides characters not for letters, but for combinations of letters into sounds and syllables. Scholars continued their studies of the Codex for years, certain that if they could decipher the text, the manuscript would offer some historical insights heretofore undiscovered, or at least that it would prove to be an artifact of some worth. Then, in 1866, it was revealed that the wooden Book of Turok, with which the Rohonc Codex had been so favorably compared, was in fact a forgery, perpetrated by one Samuel Literati Nemes. A Hungarian antiquarian of some renown, universally respected as the discoverer of the Masmen tablets, which at the time were the sole surviving Roman writing tablets known to be in existence, Nemes sold rare old books, coins, and artwork to Hungarian aristocrats out of his old curiosity shop beneath the towering skeleton of a mammoth. The revelation that Nemes, a Hungarian nationalist, had forged the wooden Book of Turok and other items in an effort to provide some impressive monuments of Hungarian history shocked many. And this scandal stained the reputation of the Rohonc Codex, as many scholars then studying the manuscript dismissed it as another forgery by the Hungarian hoaxer.
Every summer, I'm careful to avoid getting burned. My summer plans always include applying sunscreen so I can attend barbecues and protests without worrying about getting scorched. And when I make my plans by making phone calls, I also don't want to get burned by an outrageous wireless bill. That's why I switched to a Mint Mobile plan and saved enough to take a summer vacation. With Mint, I found no difference in speed or coverage, just a big difference in cost. And right now you can switch to a Mint wireless plan like me to avoid sweating those surprise charges and overages. You'll just be chillin' with Mint's offer of 3 months premium service on the nation's largest 5G network for just $15 a month. With high-speed data and unlimited talk and text, it might just be the coolest thing happening this summer. This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get this new customer offer and your 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/blindness. That's mintmobile.com/blindness. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
Since that time, however, academic interest in the Codex has again resurged. One scholar working on translating the Codex, Benedict Lang, is convinced that it is no forgery. He argues that it is not mentioned in any of Nemes's papers, as his other forgeries are. It doesn't conform to the format and presentation of his other forgeries, which were all clearly intended to be taken as Old Hungarian, and it is far longer than his other forgeries, indeed, longer even than might have been necessary to fool Nemes's patrons. Lang also takes issue with the idea that the Rohonc Codex is a Nemes forgery based on the fact that the usual motivation isn't there. Forgeries, he says, are usually perpetrated to make money, to manipulate the historical view of the past, or to play a practical joke, But the Rohonc Codex, its content indecipherable and therefore not useful in rewriting history or otherwise pranking readers or swindling buyers, seems to have been written for intellectual purposes, which doesn't correspond with Nemes's modus operandi. In his own studies, Benedict Lang has come to the conclusion that there is some authentic meaning in the text, but rather than an unrecognized ancient language, he theorizes that it must be, quote, a cipher, a shorthand system, or an artificial language, end quote. Yet still, the Rohonc Codex remains, at least for now, a mystery. Moreover, researching the scholarship on the manuscript is made extraordinarily difficult for anyone who doesn't speak Hungarian or have access to a library of works written in that language. Aside from a couple of sources I've linked in the body of the blog entry, most of the information available online is published on websites like Historic Mysteries and blogs like Passing Strangeness and the Codex from Rohonc Project. And most of these seem to have taken much of their information from the Wikipedia entry or from obscure books like Nemethi Kalman's 1892 Rohonc Codex Tantetel, which apparently is not available online. Thus, all we have, at least until some major breakthrough becomes public, are the much repeated details that have long been known, as well as, of course, our speculations. And this is commonplace when browsing through history and peering into the darkness of its blind spots. Thanks for listening to Historical Blindness, the Odd Past podcast. Some of the music featured on this minisode was provided by Sean Duncan from his former project, Shanario. Find this artist on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and Bandcamp. We'll have a full-length episode for you hopefully within a couple weeks, so subscribe if you haven't already. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, where my username is @HistoricalBlind. If you enjoy the show and are fascinated by historical hoaxes, check out my novel, Manuscript Found, on Amazon, available in paperback and on the Kindle for a meager sum. The first of a trilogy that is mostly complete, this volume is a gripping yarn about one of the grandest hoaxes ever perpetrated, the beginning of the Mormon Church. Thanks for listening.
The Civil War and Reconstruction was a pivotal era in American history,
when a war was fought to save the Union and to free the slaves.
and when the work to rebuild the nation after that war was over turned into a struggle to guarantee liberty and justice for all Americans.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Rich.
And we want to invite you to join us as we take an in-depth look at this pivotal era in American history.
Look for the Civil War and Reconstruction wherever you find your podcasts.